The first 24 hours are all I needed to get a good first impression of the new Fenix 8 watch. In this video, you'll learn about the important stuff, the things I care about, and the problems with this watch. The model that I have is the carbon gray DLC titanium version, which has an extra coating on it. This is the 47mm version, and it's the perfect size for most wrists. If you go with the 51mm version, remember that you need a huge wrist and forearm, or it's going to look a bit ridiculous. And unlike the 47mm, which will look great in any occasion, the 51mm is neither going to look that great when dressed up a bit formally, nor is it going to be as comfortable as this one. So I wouldn't just go for the 51mm because it looks so badass. The 47mm looks just as sexy. The bezel material of this watch is titanium, but they also have a stainless steel version. The casing is made of plastic and the back of the case is just metal. My watch also has a sapphire crystal, which is very scratch resistant, but they also have the Gorilla Glass version, so pay attention to what you're buying. The reason I opted for the DLC titanium version is the extra coating, which makes it more durable. It's highly scratch and water resistant with the new water seal, and all of them are very shock and thermal resistant. But the titanium version is also 7 grams lighter than the stainless steel version. And generally speaking, you want a watch as big as this one, or the 51mm version, to be as comfortable as possible. So far, after 24 hours, this has been the experience for me. A comfortable watch to wear all day long and at night. Now I need to talk about the buttons. The Epix Pro and Fenix 7 from last year had very clicky buttons that were very satisfying to use, but the buttons on this watch are different. Instead of that hard resistance and clickiness, they're soft and a little mushy to the touch, and I've been thinking how to describe it, but it feels like you're pressing down a spring with a tiny haptic feedback at the end instead of a click. I'm still trying to get used to it, but I mean, as long as the feeling is consistent with every single button, I'm fine with it, which is the case. For example, the Venu 3 series had some QC issues with the buttons. I usually check the watch faces first thing. I gotta say I'm not quite impressed with this time, and I think the list of default watch faces aren't that extensive. Having said that, I think I like the default digital one, and also this watch face. I haven't seen many examples of a hybrid watch face that's half digital, half analog. Usually they're fully overlaid on top of each other, and yet this hybrid watch face is quite functional with a lot of data fields. I can also customize the colors to an extent. If you'd like to install this watch face, its name is Frost. We'll see if I'll keep this after spending some more time with this watch. Just let me know in the comments if you ended up with this watch face. You can of course use the third-party watch faces, some free, some paid, and you can also design your own watch face. I did a quick one, and I don't like that you're so limited to only a few complications on the layout of the watch face. One of the first things I noticed was that the UI has changed again, and if you ask me, I'd say it's now a little more difficult to navigate around than before, especially because of all these different menus that you can open with different buttons. But of course, as soon as you get used to them, you're probably going to appreciate that there's a dedicated menu to each button, and I'm going to cover these in a future tips and tricks video, so stay tuned. Also, as a first impression, I'd say the UI isn't polished yet, and I've experienced at least one serious bug when I opened the activities menu. I couldn't go back to the watch face at all, and also quite a lot of lagginess in different places. I've had one update already, but that hasn't fixed any of these. But one thing that's very satisfying is the haptic feedback when scrolling, whether touch scrolling or using the buttons. Now there are so many features that this watch has, and I'm going to cover those in future videos, but in this first impression video I'd like to go over the most important ones as they apply to my experience during the first 24 hours. So why don't we start with one of my favorite features that's new to this watch, and that's voice notes. I use voice memos, and because the Fenix 8 now has a mic and speaker, I can record these memos with this new feature. But I don't like how quiet the speaker is. I mean, it's not too quiet, but I wish it was a few decibels louder. This is an example of how the microphone of the Fenix 8 sounds like while I'm holding it right in front of my mouth. But this new microphone and speaker set opens up a whole new set of feature possibilities. So in addition to voice notes, you can also, for the first time, use your phone's assistant directly on the watch. Increase volume. Not just that, but there's also a feature called voice commands that allows you to control your watch itself. For example, you can start a run or something else. And in a near future video, I'm going to show you how to use this feature like a pro. It can be a little slow though, which is fine as long as it works. But I mean, this is an example of an unpolished and buggy software that I mentioned before and no one else talks about. As you can see, the watch is completely frozen and unusable. So imagine if this happens right before a race. This is a serious issue that needs to be fixed ASAP. Now let's talk about some of the health features of this watch. If you're new to Garmin, you probably don't know about the body battery. It's basically an estimation of your overall energy level that dynamically changes throughout the day, usually for the worst. It's typically affected by stress, your activities, and sleep. And this has become more insightful throughout the years, and it literally has a button called View Insight that tells you more about your energy situation and how to keep it balanced. A couple years ago, I was really skeptical of this feature. Now I rely on it so much and try to give it a few days for more accurate readings. And now there are two charts here, one for the last 12 hours and another one for the last 4 hours, which has the body battery and stress levels overlaid on top. And finally, you can see which factors and by how much have significantly affected your body battery throughout the day. For example, I recharged 65 units overnight and lost 14 units during my workout today, and gained a couple units back while resting during the day. The Fenix 8 can track sleep at night and naps during the day, but you can also schedule different sleep routines for different days of the week, which makes this watch a great choice for shift workers. In terms of my first impressions, I'm happy with the very precise start and end of sleep time. Also, according to the sleep coach, which is another feature of this watch, I need an extra 20 minutes of sleep. And there's also the new skin temperature that works throughout the day and at night. So many watches only track skin temperature at night, but this one tracks it all day long. But when it comes to skin temperature, the absolute numbers don't matter as much as the deviation of the baseline does. And to see this value, which is called average skin temperature change, you could open the Garmin Connect app and check out the sleep page. And probably the most important health feature on this watch is the HRV measurements. Heart rate variability is the timing between each consecutive heartbeat, and generally speaking, healthier and younger individuals have higher HRV. But the reason having it on a watch like this is so useful is that it creates a 7-day average HRV with low and high values during those 7 days, and you can easily at a glance see if your HRV is in balance. So that means it shouldn't jump too high or too low outside the normal range. So that's why one of the first things I check every morning is my HRV. You can also monitor your SpO2, and by default, this is only on demand, and I changed it to during sleep. And with such a powerful and pricey watch, I think it'd be a waste to just leave it as on demand. Now I can finally talk about some of the training features. Let's start with training readiness. This is a simple and easy to understand metric that you can use to gauge how ready you are to do your next training session. And that's what makes it different. It's not just about whether you're ready or not. It's about how ready you are. And the reason this is such a great feature is because it takes into account several factors to determine your readiness score. Those are your sleep, recovery from your last session, HRV status, acute load, which we'll talk about, and even sleep and stress history. Really cool feature. All right, this next feature is even cooler because it provides a long-term, big picture view as to how your training is actually affecting you in different ways. And it's called training status. The status itself could be many different things. I'm currently maintaining my fitness levels, and if I take a look at my 4-week load focus, I can see that I have a high aerobic shortage. So that means I need to do things like faster runs in addition to what I always do to possibly improve my training status as long as everything else is in balance. So that means if I just go at it really hard for a couple sessions, I might actually overtrain and lower my training status. So a balance is required, and this is usually easy to find about from the acute load metric, which is, in simple terms, the effort you put into your recent trainings. The goal should always be to keep that in range, and that's why it's such a precious feature to have on this watch. But this acute load is only a good metric for recent activities. What if you want to know how you're doing compared to a longer term period? Then you gotta check out the load ratio, which is just as useful. And again, the goal should be to keep it in range. I've tried one strength training session with this watch and the HR accuracy was pretty good overall. The real max HR during this session was 164 BPM as measured by my chest strap, and the Fenix 8 measured 158 BPM. The real average HR was 124 BPM, and this watch reported 122 BPM. It's also great that you can see so much of the stats for an activity directly on the watch itself, but still, if you open up the app, you can see more. For example, I tracked my temperature as well during this session that I can only see on the Garmin Connect app. And for each individual activity, I can see the training effect of that activity, like the primary benefit and exercise load. When it comes to battery life, Garmin says up to 16 days in smartwatch mode and up to 7 days with always on display. I never use the AOD, but I usually increase the screen time out, and in this case I changed it from 8 seconds to 15 seconds and turned on the SpO2 monitoring during sleep. I'll be sure to let you know about the battery life with moderate use so you know what to expect from it, so stay tuned. I'd say this would probably be a happy purchase for many people, but it's critical that they fix the bugs that I've discovered and polish the UI and its responsiveness so that it reflects the hefty price of it. If you want to save some money and still get pretty much the same experience and even a better UI experience, you could consider buying the Epix Pro at a lower price. Whichever one you end up wanting to buy, please consider using the links in the description for your purchases. I'll see you in the next one, guys.